Thank you, everyone, and thank you for being here. I want to start with a joke. Usually when I present at this kind of events in other countries, I get the slot just before lunch, when people are without energy and they're waiting for their food. So very happy now. I'm getting a full energized crowd just entering here, and very curious to hear about what's this conference all about. I'm Corina-Andreea Bulimar, and I'm leading the business development for Mastercard service for retail and commerce across Southeast Europe. And I need to make this introduction because when everyone hears Mastercard, they think about the payments industry, which is true. But over the past 20 years, Mastercard has developed into being more than just a payments company. It developed into being a technology company, and it all started from the data that we get from the payments, but we developed it by bringing in the best consultants in the world and developed loyalty programs. We developed personalization strategies and A/B testing, which I'm going to talk a little bit later. Now, before getting into how do we work with retailers, I want to show you some trends when it comes to the Bulgarian consumers. So if you look at the categories, there's a huge rise in card payments, no matter the industry. But what's more important is that when it comes to ATV, which is the average transaction value, so the average basket, to say it like that, this kind of stays flat, doesn't move as much, which means that we have shoppers trying to optimize their budget without increasing their basket, but going more frequent to the stores, which can mean a challenge on loyalty, but also a good opportunity to catch them while we have them there. And this happens even in the e-commerce sector. But what's more important is that when we look at experiences, so accommodation and travel agencies and airlines, this basket is increasing. Bulgarian shoppers are spending more on experience. And no matter, there's no surprise that you guys have so many concerts planned for this year with a lot of international names coming, because there's a lot of potential there. Now, if we are to look at the overall basket and how does the shopper split it based on the industry as a weight of it, again, the data we have here shows that there's more allocation to appearance, to travel, to experiences, and Bulgarians are diminishing a lot their essentials and the home goods overall percentage they have spent in their basket. Should I point this one somewhere to move it? Oh, okay. There's also another thing we looked at, and by the way, this is pure transactional data, so it's not what shoppers declare, it's not something we get from some statistics, it's exactly what we see in the transactional data. So it seems that there's a huge inclination into spending on more premium when it comes to cosmetics versus jewelry, into hospitality, right? Going outside of our home and spending into traveling, where there's a lot of tear down when it comes to apparel and food groceries. Again, similar to what I was showing. Now, the data is here. So what? I've tried to bring at the Balkans conference a little bit of inspiration of how do we work with retailers across the globe into solving from some of the most common challenges. And we said, okay, what are the top 3 things we look at? The first one is that we understand, we measure, and we engage and personalize. And I'll take them one by one. When it comes to understanding, it goes back to the data. And I would say that there's no one problem that fits all. It's also about the need that our retailers in Western Europe have. One, it's the need for market share, but the market share with a certain granularity, right? I need to understand how am I doing versus my competitors in a certain day, in a certain time interval. And the payments data can provide that. Or loyalty data, for example, which is there at point E. I do know everything about my shoppers based on the loyalty data, but I know what they're doing inside my store. I don't know what they're doing outside. So with the help of Mastercard, I can kind of enhance this data and follow them outside of my industry, understand what would be my best marketing activities I can do it. Or propensity lookalike modeling, right? I can look at the behavior of the shoppers I have, try to understand what are their common things and how can I extrapolate them into an acquisition campaign and bring them inside. That's about data. I just wanted to touch base very briefly on that, because I want to move now on how do we measure, right? And I know everyone tests any idea, any initiative they have in their business. The question is all the time, how do we do it correctly? How do we choose those customers, those products that we want to test on? How do we make sure that there's a test and the control that kind of sets separately? So this is how, looking around, we found what was called advanced predictive technology at that time, and we rebranded it into test and learn. We use it as a company to test our own initiatives, but we also partner with our retailers into trying to understand how we can help them. And how it goes is that before using test and learn, usually you are setting a test and the control group that were kind of similar but not necessarily in the same pattern. Then you are introducing the test, and it was very hard to measure the initiative. What this platform does is that it identifies exactly, and it tells you, for example, for an e-commerce retailer, what should be the custom control set and the test group, in order to have the same pattern, and the moment you test it, to actually understand what would be the impact of an initiative. Eliminated all the other things that are happening in the same time, and making sure then how to roll it out, how to do it properly in order to actually have an impact on your business. I will go now to the third side of the story, which is engaging and personalizing. And again, I don't need a lot of introduction here, because personalization is all around us, right? When you use Netflix, Spotify, LinkedIn, everywhere, we are served the content that is of interest for us, right? Everyone is talking about the big algorithms of these platforms. So starting from the need, again, Mastercard looked around and they found Dynamic Yield, which was software as a service, which was acquired by Mastercard because it served the personalization in the easiest way possible. And how does it did it do it? It kind of creates all these affinity profiles as a bubbles. For example, here we have a female that is interested in size small, swimming, whereas on the other side we have a size large, a male which is interested in winter sports. How do we do that? By the way the shopper is clicking on the website. There's the instant personalization that it's happening. It's also by the history of it, but there's also a lot of other data that is ingested, like the location they are logging in, the website they're logging in, the platform, and so on. And what's the result is that you kind of get the personalized experience. For example, here, you have the gear equipment on the landing page served to someone who has a big affinity to gear equipment and to menswear, whereas if I'm a woman, I will see a completely different thing, which is exactly what I'm expecting, right? So if I by the behavior I have, I don't own a garden, and it's clear that I'm living in a flat. Why should I see gardening tools? Why should I see that? And I keep being popped up with all these messages, whereas this is very relevant. It's that simple. It also changes the menu. For example, I'm going to see here first woman, here men, and so on. And it goes like that in any other spaces, like in the products recommendation. I wish I had the time to explain you in detail what it does, but I'm gonna keep the top line details. Another interesting thing is that we do get some personalization, but what happens is that I'm looking for a phone, for example, but the moment I bought it, the retailer doesn't necessarily understand that I bought it, and it keeps popping me promotions on a phone, whereas I don't need it. With this kind of platform, you kind of predict the next purchase. So I bought the phone, my smartphone affinity profile, it's done. I'm going to be ending in some other ones which are relevant and associated to it. So in this way, I can kind of influence the shopper into the next purchase and not keep insisting on something that he has already bought. How do we do it with anonymized shoppers, for example? There's this zip location code, and we can allocate them to several criteria. For example, how's the weather? If the weather is rainy, and if there's sunny in some other place, I can show you different content. For example, here we have understood that there's a specific zip code that had premium shoppers, whereas the other one had like mainstream ones. And we served the content different based on the locations they were logging in, again with more inclination to buy based on what they were seeing. And then the last one, but my favorite one, which is Shopping Muse, which is AI integrating into that via search. And you can do it as, I'm looking for a dress similar to the one Angelina Jolie wore at Oscars in 2023. And then you kind of instantly get the results of that specific or like the specific recommendation. Or you can do it via an image, right? You search on Pinterest, you find a look, or you find a room, for example, that is very relevant for you, and then you search with that, and it kind of prompts you the results on that. So that's about it from myself. I told you I could have spent hours telling you about the solutions and how we work in Western Europe with e-commerce partners to kind of help the shopper immerse into the e-commerce business. Should you have further questions, or do you want to talk about it? Happy to connect. Thank you.